Miss Molly Qerim, longtime host for ESPN's First Take, my day job, where she has been the last 10 years. Last night, she abruptly resigned as the host of the show. And to say that I'm quite sad about it is an understatement.
Molly Qerim's sudden exit from ESPN sent shockwaves through the entire sports world. But now she's breaking her silence. And in a stunning twist, she's reportedly pointing the finger straight at Stephen A. Smith. The man known for calling everyone else out might finally be facing some heat of his own. For years, Stephen A. has built his reputation on fiery takes and fearless opinions. But could this time be different? Could the spotlight finally be turning back on him, and not in the way he expected? Let's rewind to the beginning of this unraveling storm.
This is a thankless job being a moderator. I know a lot of people who've sat in that same position on different shows, that show, and this, trust me, is a thankless position. It's hard to see somebody raise their hand and keep it up high for this long. I'm actually thoroughly surprised that Molly Qerim made it this long in that position.
Molly Qerim, one of ESPN's most recognizable faces, first joined the network in 2006, grinding behind the scenes on digital and mobile platforms before earning her on-air stripes. By 2015, she became the full-time host of First Take, standing toe-to-toe with Stephen A. Smith and helping transform the morning debate show into ESPN's crown jewel. Under her lead, First Take hit record-breaking numbers, even reaching its most-watched year in 2023. But here's where the story takes a sharp turn, and most fans completely missed it.
Last night, after much reflection, I've decided it's time to close this incredible chapter and step away from First Take. Hosting this show has been one of the greatest honors of my career. Every morning I had the privilege of sharing the desk with some of the most brilliant, passionate, and entertaining voices in sports, and with all of you, the best fans in the world.
Molly didn't announce her departure on television, no press release, no farewell montage. Instead, she dropped the bomb through an Instagram story. In it, she thanked her colleagues, fans, and ESPN for what she called a dream come true, adding a cryptic "stay tuned" at the end. No clear explanation, no reason, just silence. And then came the day that changed everything.
So obviously the money matters, and I do think you make a good point. Most people have a rational thought process. Okay, if he's the alpha, everyone else has a place. But there is a belief that, hey, if you elevate your pay scale, and I'm only going to get 30% of what you're getting as the star, guess what? My 30% has to elevate with whatever you're getting. I kind of do understand that. And Jason, I was a little bit stunned.
Monday, September 15th. Molly arrived at the studio like any normal workday, hosted First Take with her usual composure, wrapped the show, and walked out. No goodbyes, no send-off, nothing. Nobody, and I mean nobody, saw this coming. Her final episode aired like any other day. No tension, no farewell, no hint of what was brewing beneath the surface. But by the next morning, the entire sports world was on fire. The quiet farewell from Molly Qerim clashed dramatically with the suddenness of her resignation, effective immediately, even though her exit had originally been planned for the end of the year. And what triggered the sudden chaos? A leak from Sports Business Journal blew the whole thing wide open. Think about that for a second.
When the first job is made so easy because you're working with somebody that makes it easy for you. And that's what she did for me personally. And so because of that, I just wanted to wish her the best, let her know the love is always here from myself, from my personal assistant and my right hand, Sumatra, my security, Juvie, and my sister Carmen, and so many people that have loved her and loved on her over the years. We've got nothing but love for her.
We're talking about a planned, gradual departure suddenly turned into an overnight walkout. What could cause a network as massive as ESPN to scramble like that? What could push Molly to fast-track her goodbye without warning? This wasn't just some random career move. This was a chess play, and every piece on the board was caught off guard. ESPN executives were blindsided, fans were stunned, and insiders started whispering that something much bigger was happening behind the scenes. The network later confirmed that contract negotiations had been ongoing.
Let's remember, wasn't it just last week Stephen A. was on air bragging about the people he stood up for to get paid, and how many, Cam, I did it for Shannon Sharp, and I did it for this person and that person. And when I look at the abrupt, I'm not coming into work tomorrow.
Yeah.
that also is like, maybe there's pointing the finger at Stephen A. Smith.
They'd reportedly offered Molly a new deal, but instead of signing, she walked away to explore other opportunities. Sounds diplomatic, right? But that's only the surface story, because here's where things start to get really suspicious. The way Stephen A. Smith found out. His reaction alone made it clear that he had no idea it was coming. And that moment, right there, was the first visible crack in what everyone thought was a calm, professional separation. Stephen A. Smith's reaction said it all, pure shock. You could see it in his face, hear it in his tone. He wasn't ready. Nobody was. This wasn't some pre-planned, neatly coordinated farewell. This was damage control unfolding in real time, live on air. You could literally feel the confusion pulsing through that broadcast. The timing made everything even more suspicious once ESPN's corporate machine kicked into gear.
So maybe she has enough money saved or whatever it is, or whatever. I don't know her financial situation, and I'm not going to be pocket watching the pocketbook of a lady, God forbid. But I'm sure she's done very well for herself. And maybe it was just time for her to move on. You know, people get, after a while, people have other interests, they decide to do other things, and I think it's perfectly normal.
Burke Magnus, the network's president of content, rushed out a polished statement thanking Molly Qerim for her poise, professionalism, and impact on First Take. He praised her legacy since 2006, credited her for helping the show dominate ratings, and even admitted they wanted her to stay, reportedly offering her expanded roles beyond First Take. But then came the line that raised eyebrows. Negotiations did not fully align with her desires. Translation? Something went wrong behind closed doors. Magnus tried to frame it all as a simple business decision, saying the split was amicable and without controversy. He even outlined ESPN's plan for a 30 to 45-day test period for new potential hosts, mentioning names like Shea Cornette, Christine Williamson, and Monica McNutt. A safe corporate move to show stability. But if it was really just business, then why the sudden urgency? Why the emotional reaction from Stephen A? Why the rushed announcement with zero preparation or closure? None of it lined up. The truth is, this wasn't just a case of one host walking away. This was the breaking point of years of quiet tension, power struggles, contract disputes, ego clashes, finally erupting for the world to see. What we witnessed wasn't a calm transition. It was the fallout from a slow-burning storm that had been brewing inside ESPN for far too long.
It's like Stephen A. put on his apology voice, you know, whenever he gets into a scandal that he has to monologue an apology for. That was the same type of voice he was using at the top of today's show.
And speaking of breaking points, this one detail in Molly Qerim's exit announcement said everything. In her Instagram story, she thanked her colleagues, praised her fans, and showed gratitude for her years at ESPN. She even teased exciting future projects. But there was one thing that stood out like a flashing red light. She never mentioned Stephen A. Smith, not once. Now, some might shrug that off as nothing, but in the world of high-stakes television, especially after 10 years of working side by side, that silence was deafening. When Shannon Sharpe left Undisputed, he took the time to personally thank Skip Bayless. When Max Kellerman was removed from First Take, he still exchanged public respect and appreciation. That's the norm, even when things get messy behind the scenes. So when Molly completely skipped over Stephen A.'s name, that wasn't an accident. That was intentional. A move that spoke louder than any statement she could have made. For someone who built an on-screen dynamic with Stephen A. that fans saw as professional, witty, and unstoppable, this omission ripped the mask right off that image. For years, they were marketed as ESPN's powerhouse duo, the faces that carried First Take to record-breaking ratings. Molly's poised composure and Stephen A.'s explosive energy created a chemistry that defined the show's identity. But now, that missing acknowledgement hints that things behind the scenes weren't nearly as harmonious as they looked on camera. It's also worth noting, Molly's been through her share of personal battles, including her very public fight with endometriosis. She's been resilient through it all, balancing health, career, and constant media attention. So when she quietly announced her departure on September 16, 2025, it didn't just mark the end of a contract, it marked the end of a decade-long chapter and possibly a fractured partnership that was never as solid as we thought. Molly's departure from First Take was officially described as a voluntary decision, not a firing, but that framing raised eyebrows right away. On screen, the chemistry between Molly Qerim and Stephen A. Smith was undeniable. Sharp, witty, perfectly balanced. But off camera, that same energy may have been masking a storm that had been brewing for years. Because once the cameras stopped rolling, the cracks in their professional partnership reportedly began to widen, and the aftermath of her exit only made them more visible. Burke Magnus later told The Athletic that the suddenness of her departure was due to the leak, claiming ESPN had already been preparing for a 30 to 45-day tryout period to test new hosts. But that statement opened an even bigger mystery. If ESPN was truly planning her exit for months, even lining up potential replacements, why were they still negotiating a new contract with her? That doesn't sound like a simple business decision. It sounds like a network caught between control and chaos. This is where the power dynamics come into play, and where Stephen A. Smith's influence becomes impossible to ignore. Behind the polished sets and friendly debates, ESPN operates like a hierarchy where personalities with clout hold real leverage. And make no mistake, Stephen A. isn't just another employee. He's the face of the network, the highest paid on-air personality, and the one whose word carries serious weight in internal decisions. So what happens when someone working directly beside him, like Molly, wants more power, more money, or more creative control? That's when things get complicated. And here's where Stephen A.'s reaction tells the real story. When he finally addressed Molly's departure on air, he expressed sadness and surprise, insisting he wished her nothing but the best. But if you listen closely, he was extremely careful with his words. Measured, guarded, almost like a man walking on eggshells. Stephen A. Smith's careful dance around the details became even more suspicious once the criticism started rolling in. On the Speakeasy podcast, hosts Emmanuel Acho, Qerim, Hickey Simpson, and LaShawn McCoy didn't hold back. They accused Stephen A. of fueling the drama instead of calming it down. They pointed out that during his discussion of Molly's exit, Stephen A. repeatedly used phrases like abruptly resigned and hinted that there were details he couldn't share. That kind of language, vague, mysterious, intentionally unfinished, instantly made fans think something explosive happened behind the scenes. Acho specifically called him out, saying it made no sense to ask for privacy while simultaneously teasing hidden drama to millions of listeners. And he was right. That contradiction hit deeper than just communication style. What Acho and others were really suggesting is that Stephen A. wasn't just reacting emotionally, he was strategically shaping the narrative. Instead of letting the moment be about Molly's contributions or giving her a clean exit, he turned it into a conversation, one that conveniently kept him at the center of it all. This wasn't the first time critics accused Stephen A. of using controversy to keep his name trending, but in this case, it wasn't just about ego, it was about leverage. Because here's the part that most viewers don't realize. Stephen A. Smith isn't just the star of First Take, he's also one of its executive producers. That gives him serious power, not just over what happens on air, but behind the scenes too. He has influence over casting decisions, creative direction, and yes, even elements of contract negotiations involving other on-screen talent. Stephen A. Smith isn't just a sports commentator anymore. He's a full-blown power player. With a reported $40 million a year deal and growing influence in both sports and politics, his reach inside ESPN is almost untouchable. And once you understand just how powerful he's become, Molly Qerim's exit starts to look very different. This wasn't simply about ESPN refusing to pay Molly what she was worth. It might have been about who didn't fight for her when the time came. After a decade of working side by side, many expected Stephen A. to have her back. But according to insiders, that didn't happen. Former ESPN analyst Marcellus Wiley dropped one of the most revealing takes on his own podcast, claiming Molly's departure wasn't just a business decision, it was the result of unmet demands and silent politics. Wiley speculated that Molly had pushed for a pay increase to around $500,000 per year, while Stephen A. was earning a staggering $20 million. The contrast was brutal, a 40-to-1 income gap between two people sharing the same stage every morning. Wiley went even further, suggesting that Molly also wanted a new opportunity, possibly her own show, and that Stephen A. didn't advocate for her behind the scenes. That's where things get messy. Because in ESPN's hierarchy, support from someone with Stephen A.'s weight can literally decide who stays, who gets promoted, and who gets quietly phased out. This revelation opened fans' eyes to something they'd never considered. ESPN isn't just a network, it's a power ecosystem, and Stephen A. sits at the top of it. His opinion can shape contracts, influence casting, and sway decisions far beyond First Take. What's becoming clear is a pattern, one that completely changes how we understand Molly Qerim's situation. Stephen A. Smith has long been known for using his influence to advocate for certain colleagues, but not everyone gets the same treatment. Some insiders say he chooses who to back and who to leave hanging. So the real question is, where did Molly fall in that hierarchy? And why didn't Stephen A. go to bat for her the way he did for others? To get the answer, you have to look at how their professional relationship evolved over the years. On camera, they kept things smooth, sharp debates, witty exchanges, mutual respect. But behind that professional chemistry, tension had reportedly been bubbling for a while. At first glance, most of their clashes seemed harmless, just passionate sports talk. But when you connect the dots, it paints a much deeper story. Multiple on-air moments over the years revealed cracks that fans brushed off as entertainment, but now look like real frustration slipping through the mask. Take December 2024, for example. During a heated first take debate about Bill Belichick's rumored coaching move to UNC, Molly boldly called Stephen A. out, accusing him of prioritizing box office appeal and ignoring smaller markets. The exchange got tense, uncomfortable even, with Stephen A. visibly irritated that she dared challenge his logic live on air. Then came January 2024. The viral clip that fans still remember. During a light segment, Stephen A. joked about Molly's evolution from host to supermodel status. But Molly didn't laugh. Instead, she muttered under her breath something that was caught by microphones. A censored but clearly frustrated response that set social media on fire? But the most revealing moment of all came in June 2025, the incident that fans still whisper about. During a live segment, Molly Qerim discreetly told Stephen A. Smith to close his laptop after noticing the camera had accidentally caught a glimpse of his screen, potentially exposing private messages. At first, Stephen A. hesitated, seemingly brushing it off, until Molly quietly repeated herself, explaining the risk and trying to protect him from possible embarrassment on national television. The clip went viral almost immediately. Online viewers twisted the moment, framing it as Stephen A. refusing to listen. And while Molly's move was clearly to help him, his hesitation and subtle irritation told another story. Beneath the polite smiles and calm voices, that tiny exchange revealed something much bigger, a simmering frustration that had been building for years. Individually, moments like this could easily be brushed off as harmless workplace tension. But when you line them up, from the on-air clashes to the awkward silences to the public omission in her farewell post, a clear pattern starts to take shape. Over 10 years, what once looked like a strong professional partnership began unraveling piece by piece quietly, right in front of millions of viewers. Marcellus Wiley later analyzed this chain of events and hit the nail on the head. He said Molly's decision to exclude Stephen A. from her farewell wasn't an oversight. It was deliberate, a subtle but powerful message of resentment and independence. Her sudden immediate exit, Wiley believed that was symbolic too. A calculated move to expose how fractured the relationship had become, all while keeping it under the label of business tension. And that's the part that stings the most, because if Wiley's right, then the truth is simple yet brutal. When it came time to stand up for Molly, Stephen A. Smith, with all his power, all his influence, and all his pull inside ESPN, allegedly chose not to. And if all that's true, it opens up a storm of uncomfortable questions about loyalty, trust, and the ruthless realities of the sports media world. Because behind the lights, the fame, and the friendly smiles, there's a brutal truth. Power always decides who wins and who disappears quietly. Molly Qerim's exit wasn't just about leaving a show. It was a power shift, a behind-the-scenes clash that exposed how influence, loyalty, and money can twist even the strongest professional bonds. What happened between Molly and Stephen A. Smith isn't just gossip. It's a case study in how media giants operate when their biggest names collide. Let's break down what happened right after Molly's departure, because ESPN's response said more than any press release ever could. Officially, the network tried to frame the situation as a straightforward business decision without controversy. But the speed and urgency of their reaction told a very different story. Within hours, ESPN executives were scrambling to control the narrative. Internal sources said meetings were held immediately to plan messaging, calm advertisers, and reassure staff. This wasn't treated like a routine departure, it was treated like a crisis. And that's what makes the next move so fascinating. ESPN did something they never do when a high-profile talent leaves. They broke their own silence policy. Normally, when someone exits, the network issues a short, polite statement. We thank them for their contributions and wish them the best. Then they move on. Clean, minimal, detached. But in Molly's case, Burke Magnus, the president of content, went straight to The Athletic and gave a detailed explanation of the circumstances surrounding her exit. That was unprecedented. He didn't just confirm she was leaving, he explained why, referenced leaks, timelines, and even the internal transition plan. That level of transparency was a clear sign ESPN knew how explosive this situation really was, and that they weren't just dealing with a departure, they were dealing with a potential reputation firestorm. This level of corporate spin made one thing crystal clear. ESPN wasn't just managing a departure, they were fighting to control a narrative. The network wasn't losing just another host. They were risking a full-blown public relations disaster that could shake the foundation of First Take, their crown jewel. The concern wasn't only about replacing Molly Qerim, it was about silencing the uncomfortable questions that her exit had unleashed about how ESPN really treats its on-air talent. And this is where industry insiders started digging in, analyzing the situation from the perspective of power, politics, and paychecks. One voice stood out above the rest: Marcellus Wiley. His analysis cut through the fluff and hit directly at the truth. Wiley had worked inside ESPN, he understood its structure, its hierarchy, and how influence decides everything, from airtime to contract extensions. According to Wiley, Molly's decision to walk away made perfect sense once you understood the machinery she was up against. She had reportedly reached a breaking point, a realization that no matter how long she negotiated, her position wasn't going to improve. The imbalance of power was too steep, and the promises too hollow. Wiley explained that Molly likely saw the writing on the wall: months of stalled talks, shifting priorities, and being overshadowed by bigger names with stronger backing. So instead of waiting around for an outcome that would never favor her, she took control, ending her decade-long run on her own terms, even if that meant walking out abruptly. But Wiley didn't stop there, and he highlighted the most telling factor of all: the financial gap. He revealed that other ESPN personalities, including names like Mina Kimes, were reportedly earning significantly more than Molly, despite not holding the same spotlight or responsibility as the co-host of ESPN's biggest morning show. This financial reality exposes something ESPN probably never wanted fans to see: how the network truly values its talent. Despite First Take being one of the most dominant and culturally influential shows in sports media, being its co-host apparently didn't carry the same weight, at least not when your name wasn't Stephen A. Smith. Molly Qerim's reported pay compared to others at ESPN painted a brutal picture. It showed that success doesn't always equal value inside the network system. The uncomfortable truth? Molly's position, influence, and decade-long contribution were treated as replaceable, even though she helped shape the very show that made ESPN's mornings must-watch television. And then there's the layer nobody can ignore: gender dynamics. When you study ESPN's compensation patterns, a pattern begins to emerge. Female hosts, no matter how central to the brand or how visible on screen, often find themselves battling uphill for recognition, fair pay, and real influence behind the scenes. It's not just about the money, it's about the message that money sends. But beyond the numbers, this story dives into something even deeper: loyalty and how fragile professional relationships become in high-stakes media. When the spotlight is blinding, alliances get blurry, and everyone starts looking out for themselves. Stephen A. Smith's reaction to Molly's exit revealed that perfectly. On the surface, he sounded supportive, offering her well wishes and claiming he didn't know much about her decision. But listen closely and you can hear the contradiction. He insists he was in the dark, yet openly acknowledges it was a contract issue. That's a man carefully choosing his words, not out of compassion, but self-preservation. He was walking a tightrope, appearing kind and professional while subtly distancing himself from any blame or controversy. And that strategic neutrality didn't go unnoticed. Industry colleagues and insiders saw right through it, accusing him of trying to protect his own empire at the expense of someone who'd stood beside him for 10 years. Emmanuel Acho's critique on the Speakeasy podcast hit harder than anyone expected, and it went straight for the jugular. He accused Stephen A. Smith of using Molly Qerim's departure for clicks and engagement, instead of protecting someone who had been by his side for nearly a decade. Acho didn't mince words. He said, "From a human standpoint, Molly was your partner for 10 years. We didn't need to know she abruptly resigned. Protect her at all costs." His point cut deep. If Molly didn't want the details public, then Stephen A. shouldn't have been the one amplifying them. Yet that's exactly what he did. By publicly confirming she abruptly resigned, Stephen A. became the very person who fueled the speculation ESPN was trying to contain. And that's where Acho's argument hits something far bigger than media gossip. It strikes at the core of loyalty in the spotlight. When cameras are rolling, it's easy to call someone a partner. But when things fall apart, the true test of loyalty isn't what you say on TV. It's what you choose not to say once the spotlight turns on you. Acho's words exposed an uncomfortable truth about modern media. Even friendships can become storylines when the views are worth millions. If Stephen A. truly valued his professional bond with Molly, he could have chosen silence, dignity, and respect over speculation. But instead, his words, however subtle, added fuel to an already blazing fire. And the ripple effect of this saga is enormous. What we're seeing isn't just one host leaving one show, it's a case study in how power, money, and relationships collide in a high-pressure ecosystem like ESPN. Every decision, every quote, every soundbite can shift careers, rewrite reputations, and shake the foundation of billion-dollar brands. Now, as the world waits to see where Molly Qerim lands next, the stakes couldn't be higher. ESPN isn't just replacing a host. They're trying to rebuild a chemistry that took years to perfect and made First Take the cultural force it became. Success on camera doesn't always mean success behind closed doors, and that's the harsh truth this entire saga exposes. What viewers see on screen, the laughter, the teamwork, the shared respect, can hide layers of conflict and imbalance simmering just out of sight. For Molly Qerim, this wasn't just another job change. It was the end of one era and the start of another. Her decision to walk away immediately, instead of finishing out her contract, spoke volumes. That wasn't impulse, that was conviction. Molly clearly reached a breaking point, realizing that no amount of loyalty could fix a system that didn't value her worth or her voice. Rather than stay stuck in a situation that minimized her contributions, she made a bold choice. She bet on herself. That move takes courage in an industry where playing it safe is the norm. By leaving on her own terms, Molly didn't just exit ESPN, she reclaimed her narrative. And whether she lands on another network, launches her own show, or steps into a new lane entirely, one thing's certain. She left as her own boss, not as someone else's footnote. For Stephen A. Smith, though, this moment revealed something far deeper, the limits of power. He may be ESPN's highest paid star, but influence doesn't equal invincibility. His handling of Molly's departure, the timing, the tone, the calculated phrasing, will be studied and criticized for years as an example of how quickly dominance can turn into damage control. And for ESPN itself, this departure is a major stress test. Losing a personality as recognizable and respected as Molly Qerim isn't just a personnel issue, it's a branding crisis. First Take will survive, sure, but recreating the magic, trust, and chemistry that she helped build for a decade, that's a challenge money alone might not fix. And now, ESPN's entire image is on the line. How they handle Molly Qerim's replacement, and whether First Take maintains its success without her, will say everything about their ability to navigate high-profile departures and internal drama. Because make no mistake, this isn't just about one show. It's about how a billion-dollar network handles loyalty, respect, and power when the cameras stop rolling. The broader sports media world is watching closely too. Molly's exit has become a cautionary tale, proof that in this industry, relationships can crumble overnight, and business decisions can leave lasting scars. When egos, influence, and money collide, even the strongest partnerships can disintegrate in an instant. And as the dust settles, the Molly Qerim saga is far from finished. Wherever she goes next, whether it's another major network or her own platform, her every move will be dissected. Meanwhile, First Take continues to push forward, but without its longtime anchor, the chemistry feels different, and fans can sense it. What's already clear, though, is that this story isn't just about one host walking away. It's a mirror reflecting the harsh truth of modern sports media, the politics, the pressure, and the personal toll of living under constant scrutiny. Success comes at a price, and in this case, the cost might be higher than anyone expected. If you made it this far, drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Stephen A. could have handled this better? Should Molly have stayed and fought, or was walking away the smartest move she ever made? Make sure to like, subscribe, share, and stay tuned for more shocking stories just like this one. And I'll see you in the next one.